What is going on, everybody? It's been a year. Yes, it has. Yeah, life, life got busy. Had to make some priority choices, but we are back. Well, I should say right now, I am back. We are gonna sit there. We've got a lot of stuff in store. I'm gonna try to start out with some daily shows, just little topics. I'm gonna just jump into it. The off season was so adventurous, like so adventurous between Dame Lillard trade and Wemby being drafted to the Spurs. The James Harden saga, though, seems like it's the last thing that's unresolved. Season starts today, and we still don't know really where it stands. Um, for a brief recap, I'm sure anyone's watching this knows this, but James Harden has to be traded away from the Sixers. Now, this thing is so layered that I wish it was something that was just that simple. I'm very much a player empowerment guy. Like players want to go somewhere, they don't want to be somewhere. I'm big on like move them. I don't want people on my team that don't want to be there. It creates a bad atmosphere. The Sixers aren't my team. I'm just talking about in general. So, James Harden. For when I say this is layered, in an ideal situation, you see Dame Lillard asked to be moved, he got moved. Beal asked to be moved, he got moved. But you can't be that guy who keeps doing it. And that's really what's hurting him above everything else right now. There's other issues. So we're going to start with the basketball issues first. First is age. He's getting older, still a hell of a player. Secondly, is last two of the last 3 years, he's been dealing with a lot of injuries. Part of that's getting older, but you look at that paycheck and it's kind of hard to swallow giving this guy this much money if he's been unhealthy. But I'm convinced that like that's a minor issue for him. Like hopefully like this is one of those things where he comes into camp and he's good, but who knows? But the real issue is all these past trade demands. That's the real issue. And the reason why it's the real issue is not because oh he wants to be somewhere, send him there. It's because now he's put himself in a spot where if you're that team trading for him, you say to yourself like, well, when is it that he wants to be out of here? Like I had a couple discussions on X talking about James Harden and people thinking that the Sixers have all the leverage because they have the star player. And in most cases, that would be true. The Clippers offered them the equivalent of some role players, a first round pick, and a first round swap. And people, and they won't, and Terrence Mann is not one of those role players. And I know the Sixers would like Mann. I know there's a lot of, they want more draft picks, they want all of this. The issue with all of that, though, is they have no leverage. James Harden has stripped them of all leverage, not just because of how he's handling things right now. Calling your GM or vice, I can't remember what Maury's role is. He might be president. Calling him a liar, that hurts. That's a problem. But even if that weren't the only, like his past history of bailing on his team, and that's what this is. You have years of contract left, and you're bailing. It leaves a bad taste, not just in those organizations, but anyone who wants to deal with you. And the Clippers have so far have really been the only team who've shown a real interest in him. And their answer has been real players, first round, and a first round swap. And because it doesn't matter what James Harden's worth or what he can do, it's his perceived worth that's the problem. He doesn't have a very high perceived worth right now. Teams look at him as like, do I want to bring this guy on my team? Because James Harden is one of the greatest offensive weapons we've seen, at least in this modern era. incredible offense. But the thing is he doesn't want to. I'm going to say that I don't want to say he doesn't want to, but there are times where it feels like he doesn't want to do the things that don't involve the basketball. Doesn't really want to play defense, doesn't really want to hustle, doesn't really want to slash, isn't really interested in those part of those games. On top of that, he's playing with the MVP, the reigning MVP, and well, he's not really playing right now, but he's playing. He was playing with the MVP, and he still like did those things in the playoffs that, right or wrongly, he's gotten to be known for as just bad playoff performances. So you find yourself in a great situation as it pertains to team personnel, and again, you're ready to bail. Maybe it's a money issue. Maybe it's not. Like I don't know enough, and I'm not here to like judge James. Like that's his career. But I am here to sit there and say how this plays out is not good. It's just not. The only way that Clippers deal comes up, the only way the Clippers offer more or anybody else offers more is if they come into the season struggling. That's it. There's no other reason for anybody to offer more, and the Clippers are not going to bid against themselves. This is not the 1980s and 1990s Clippers where the front office was questionable. This is a solid front office. So they're not going to bid against themselves. So what's James to do? Me personally, I think the best thing he can do is work for the team, play hard, hustle, minimize what he says to the media, and work behind closed doors and let them know, like, yes, I went out. I know I have an expiring contract, and I'll just work really hard and I'll play hard. Sometimes winning has a way of fixing these things, but you have to allow yourself to surrender yourself to that. The best example I can come up with off the top of my head is maybe demanded to be traded from the Lakers. They couldn't get a deal done in part because of Kobe, in part because of themselves, in part because of other teams. They just couldn't get a deal done. It was close, but they just couldn't get it done. Kobe reported to camp. He did his job, and things changed. Kobe changed. His teammates changed. Everything adjusted, and as it adjusted, his mentality adjusted. So look, but James doesn't want to be there. So that's the first problem. And the but I don't think sitting out, I don't think being quiet, I don't think these protesting things are going to help him get the money he wants. Like Paul Pierce brought it up the other day, and it's a point I had made many times before. James Harden reminds me of Allen Iverson and Carmelo Anthony. Not in how he plays, just in the fact of he has a style of play that suits him very well. That doesn't always suit his teammates very well. And when you go after it and you want to make it all about you, and especially when you're on a team where you have an MVP caliber player and it can't be all about you, you're going to end up in a bad spot like this. You have to adjust. I'm not saying James is not an all-time great. He is a Hall of Famer. He is one of those guys. The thing is the difference between James Harden and the greatest of the greats is that the greatest of the greats find a way to make it work and find a way to win. And James Harden hasn't done really either of those on a team level. He's found a way to make it work for himself. He's found a way to sit there and make it work in terms of scoring titles and awards. But his attitude and mentality has not been the best for his teams. And it's not so much that he can't do. Well, I don't know if he can do it, honestly. Like I know in the very beginning of his career he got on board, but then the question of that is how much of himself and confidence of himself do he believe in? Because remember, like according to Stephen A. Smith, like James kind of shot himself in the foot. I'm gonna read a quote from Stephen A. Smith. He actually talked himself out of a max deal because he went there talking about how he wanted to return to being that scoring champion. And Emi Aduku And then we're like, nah, we ain't trying to have that here. Point being, Houston was looking to bring him back. Houston loves him. The city loves him. The franchise loves him. They were looking to bring him back. And his attitude was, oh, it's about me. And then they decided to pass on him. Like, that's not going to help. So, could this be the end of the road for James Harden? I'm not going to say yes because he's still got a lot of gas in the tank. He's still very talented, but it would probably be the end of the road for James Harden if he doesn't either take a substantial salary cut when he's a free agent or he's willing to go to a team that's not an ideal situation where they're going to just let him score because they want the attendance. They want the money that comes from him playing the way he does. At the end, like, this is the unresolved issue of the offseason. We are waiting to see what James Harden is going to do. I personally think he's a very good fit with Philly. I think he's a very good fit with Embiid. I would like to see him step up and play out this season hard. Like, I get he doesn't want to be there. Be a professional. Play the season out hard because this is one of the few teams that has the talent level that you're saying, oh, they could actually go somewhere. They could actually like really do something. And I know they have it the last couple of years, but those are growing pains. You have a new coach, and that's the other side of this thing. He has a new coach this year. So if Doc was the problem, okay, well now we have Nick Nurse. Like, I just would like to see him step up and be more because he's capable of being more. I would like to see him like get past this moment, even if it means next year he leaves in free agency, so that he has a future in the league. And right now, it very much feels like he's shooting himself in the foot. And if he shoots himself in the foot, he very well like may take the Sixers down with him. I know that the Knicks are gearing up to try to like just waiting for an opportunity to, at least according to Pompey, the Sixers beat writer, they're looking to get a chance to like trade for Embiid. Now their deal is essentially a borderline all star, a young good player, and a couple draft picks, which is not going to be enough for an MVP player. But it's a starting point for what would be a sweepstakes. But I just don't know if there's enough in the James Harden gas tank, if there's enough in the interest for James Harden for any deals to really get done, unless either Philly settles for much, Philly settles for much less, or James Harden reports and plays hard. So that's today's video. A couple quick notes. We I've got a lot of things planned for us this year. I ask your patience. We are coming back. We're going to be here on YouTube. We're going to be back on our podcast, which will be on Spotify and wherever you get your podcast from. Um, had a lot of interesting ideas. Eventually, Nate and Darnell will be back on, so that they're always a laugh and a good time with. But I am glad to be back. Um, you can reach us on our Twitter with at Ball Up Top Pod. Well, I guess X now. Instagram at Ball Up Top Podcast. Threads is at Ball Up Top Podcast. We are sometime this week we'll be starting up, probably doing TikTok, working a little bit more on our Facebook. We got some ideas of how to adjust our social media so each thing brings you a little something different. But yeah, like I'm hoping to go to some live games. I'm hoping to get a lot of things in here this season. We are glad to be back. Have a good night. Opening day. Have a good night.